Okay, we're live. This is MC1 Gamer with guest Vince Ventrello. Hey, Vince.
Hello, how you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. We are going to be doing one of the first PDF Army unlocks for Age of Sigmar. We're going to take a look at all the Warscrolls for Skaven. I know we're a little bit late, guys. Sorry about that. But I wanted to go over a couple things beforehand, before we actually take a dive into the Skaven Warscrolls and look over the rules and see how they compare maybe to 8th and how they might be how they might play. But one of the things I wanted to talk about were some of the rules that a lot of you have been discussing over the last few days, and one of them was the idea of summoning and reincarnation and whatnot. And Vince, you and I had kind of discussed this a little bit with some comments on some of these vids. One of the things that we found, and just to go over what the controversy was, Unleashed Wargaming, who put out a really good video trying to go over some of the things that people have been getting wrong. One of them was about any units that were summoned into or reincarnated into the game or brought in from reserves. A lot of mechanics from scenarios do that. Some armies obviously do that, and there are terrain that actually allow you to do that. One of the ways he was interpreting it, which I kind of read it and thought, you know, he might have something there, was that they were automatically instantly looked at as casualties, which really could put a hammer on really make it a big deal on what decisions you make when and if you do this. And then, you know, after some discussion about whether or not the rules as it was specifically written, what it was interpreted about, one of the viewers actually came in and said, hey, you know, I've got the German translation, and it seems a little bit clearer that it's not an auto casualty. They just were clearing it up that whenever you bring in anything off board onto the table that wasn't there during deployment, what they were trying to clarify was that it does count if it's destroyed or removed as a casualty, which is a little bit more. It's really interesting that the German translation gave us a better understanding of the English translation. So that seems to make a little more sense. And the big disparity with that, Vince, I think, is that in 8th edition, especially End Times, they were talking about summoning when the Nagash book came out as not having any impact on victory. So this was, I think, a distinction to clarify that in Age of Sigmar, anything that's summoned or brought in off board after the initial deployment, it's not that it's an automatic, these are casualties that count against you. It's that they need to be at potential points that work against you in minor victories. How does that sit with you?
Yeah, I always read it that way.
Yeah.
So it was never controversial to me. It's just it's an oddity of English sentence structure. It does not surprise me that it's clarified in other things. You see this in all sorts of other literary research, where if you really want to read the Bible, you need to go back to like Hebrew and Greek and stuff like that. It's the same thing. Like, English is just weird in the way we structure sentences, and it can lead to miscommunications. So it's just the same thing.
I think it's just weird the way GW typically does it, but I find it very funny that a 4-page document is becoming, you know, it's still hard to interpret some of the issues or the things that are in there. People are catching things in different ways. But I think it also has to do is maybe it's just the way our brains work in general. We have this history of how Warhammer has run over the course of many years, and when at least this is the case that's been happening with me, and I read through the rules, and I've read through the rules many times, and I guess there's times where you just breeze past it because you immediately start putting in the pieces that you think the way it should be reading as you're going through it. And one of the things that I think that I just glossed over and just assumed it was a different way, and I had to reread it after it was pointed out to me by another viewer, was cover. Cover doesn't inherently give you any kind of benefit where it would give them a subtraction to a shooter's to hit roll. Instead, what you would have to do is you'd have to read it really carefully, because I went back and read it afterwards. It actually just simply gives you a modifier to your save, to your armor save.
Yeah. So if you have a 3-up, you go to 2-up, but it's only for the people in cover. You don't gain it if you charged that round. You
don't gain it if you charged, and you have to have your unit fully inside the cover. It doesn't mean that you have to be behind cover. You could be sitting on a hill. It's just as long as everything in that unit is on the terrain piece. And that might seem a little controversial to some people as well. But these are representations. This is not, and I say this in one of my videos also, it's not photorealistic. We're not talking about historical war gaming where you're trying to make it look as realistic as possible. As long as you're sitting on top of that terrain piece with that unit, they will gain that +1 to their save. There is a scenario PDF, by the way, that talks about walls and stuff like that has some other mechanics that we can go over another time. But I wanted to clarify just those rules because those are just recent things that some people were having debates on. And I thank you for all the people that have input with clarifications and stuff in a variety of different topics, including you, Vince.
Sure. Let me jump in here real quick and put on a different hat. Let me put on my game designer hat since I've been doing this for a while now. And that is to say, things like the discussion over the summoning are the exact sorts of things that drive me completely insane. Okay, like from a game designer point of view, because here's the thing: every game designer wants to write a clear, fun game, and every game designer tries to write clear sentences. And I have had the same sort of thing happen in games I write, where I write the sentence, seems clear to me. I have my editor read it, seems clear to them. And then somebody somewhere down the line will read the sentence and be like, well, did you mean this? And I'm like, how could you possibly think I meant that? That is insane, what you just said. You are a crazy person. And it drives me just bonkers. But that's not an insult to people who read it this way. They can't help but read it however they read it. My point is just that we have to understand that, like, they're not... It's easy for us to sit here and go, oh, well, just write it more clearly. I wish I could curse people to have to design a game and go through the feedback that you get from people. Believe me when I tell you, people of the internet, it isn't that easy, okay? I don't care if it's 4 pages or 400 pages. The nature of the English language is such that, and you want to know what's clear? Go read your city's bylaws. See how well those keep you up at night. Okay, that's like subsection 1, pursuant to the person of this. Legalese is clear, and it's boring, and it's 7 million pages long, because that's how you make the English language clear. You write documents that are stacked like that. Nobody wants to read that. So guess what, folks? There's going to be some discussions from now until the end of time. Clarity looks like legal documents. Anybody who wants to play that? Good luck.
All right. Well, now that we've gotten all that out of the way, which thank you for, obviously, you give us great insight, just being that that's the kind of thing that you do for a living. Why don't we jump into the Warscrolls? I've gone through them once before. I skimmed them, and then I looked over a bunch of them, obviously, in preparation for this. Yes. I found some really interesting things that I think that is going to be wonderful whenever we unlock one of these armies. The Skaven, I want to preface this by saying that I going back to when I first started playing. When I wasn't really that big of a fan of Skaven, they just seemed, too wacky for me. But I've come to appreciate the army a lot on the other side of the table. I've never played them as one of my armies, which is a completely different way of appreciating them. But being on the other side of the table, I've had some really fun and interesting games, and if you take the game just try to enjoy the game. When you're playing things like Orcs and Goblins or Skaven or any army that has any of these kinds of mechanics, and being on the other side and seeing some of the silliness or some of the randomness or the seeming randomness of it, it can lead to a lot of fun. It's not necessarily the play style that I like, but looking at some of these PDFs, I have come to appreciate just how goddamn dangerous this army is. I mean, more so than they were even in 8th edition. So the way we're going to do this for our viewers is we're going to go look over the PDF. We're going to go through them, one at a time, at the Warscrolls, and we'll look and we'll go over some of the abilities. We'll talk about hopefully we'll have enough time to go through all of them. I'm not sure how much time you have to stay with me.
To be quick.
Okay, so we'll try to be brief on each of them, and then we'll try and gauge about whether or not they've improved or weakened in comparison to where they are in the game from 8th edition. But there is a lot of mortal wounding in this.
It's so funny you say that. I was going to say the catchphrase for Skaven is mortal wound. It's so we're on the same page.
It's crazy. There's a lot of in my opinion, low risk, high reward. there's a lot of mechanics that you're recurring. So then maybe we can breeze through things like some of like the weapons teams where, you know, on a one, you know, they'll take a wound, or even with some of the spells, the caster takes a wound. But if they complete what they're doing, they dish out like die 3 wounds or something like that. So the reward factor is very heavily in their favor, but there's the risk always of them taking it instead. All right, so let's jump in. I'm going to go. Why don't we screen share with you? You have the PDF up.
I do.
And we can go down the list.
All right, tell me when you can see that Skaven. Oh, let me lock it on myself here too, like a smart person. Sorry. There we go. All right. There you go. Can you see that Skaven?
Yes, I can. Oh, well,
all right.
It went back. It goes back to me when I speak, so I'll try not to.
All right, we'll skip. Oh no, it won't. You can talk all you want. I locked it on me. That's right.
Oh, okay, good.
All right, so Thankful and Bone Ripper. I assume we just want to start at the top, right?
Let's do it.
Would you like me to take the first one?
Please do.
Okay. Thankful and Bone Ripper. I mean, obviously, I don't know if you ever played the End Times version of these guys. I have them on my desk behind me there. They are Hoss in the game. Okay. They, like, in 8th edition, yeah, sure, they could get cannon down, but 4 up board for the whole unified model, so they could actually resist cannonballs pretty well, and they were super tough on wounds. In this, man, this thing is just, they are just stompers. I mean, this thing he's crazy. And I love that he can be equipped with his projectors, just like old, or he can be equipped with his braziers. Which, if he is a beast in melee. Beast. Total beast mode. So, high-level stuff on this guy that I think is really good. He heals every round, which is awesome, because that means he can climb his way back up that chart, which is fantastic. The projectors are just utterly devastating. You pick a unit, it suffers 2d6 mortal wounds, like within 8 inches. That's close. He's got to get right up on there to do it, but my God, the mortal wounds. That's so many mortal wounds.
Yeah, and I'm noticing 2 trends with route Skaven that we're going to see. One is the number 13. So this guy's got 13 wounds. That's pretty damn butch. And the range, a lot of the ranges for a lot of the stuff that are Skaven, but I'm noticing it for Scorch, is 26 inches. Not a coincidence that it's, I don't know, 13 times 2. Am I looking too deeply into this?
No, you're absolutely right. I mean, 13 is all over the place. Yeah. Gun ranges, spell ranges, it's everywhere, and I love that. That's great. That's very fluffy. I mean, the Skaven work at 13 inches. That's apparently what it boils down to. Yes. Yeah,
I think he should have been a monster. I mean, you know, Thankful on Bone Ripper is just he's a beast, and obviously, you know, we're talking about, at the very least, if you stick to rules as written, we're talking about maybe org chart type picks. What do you think about taking Thankful in comparison to some of the other ones, without going through, you know, details on any other ones? But when you've looked at him as, you know, Thankful and Bone Ripper as a choice,
you should talk to your opponent if you're going to take a guy like this. I mean, seriously, he's that good. He's an absolute wrecking ball, and it's like Nagash or any of these other big special characters. If they existed in the End Times as a big named character, they're a pretty big wrecking ball. And, you know, I mean, just be a fair player, like be Johnny Fairplay, right? I mean, he can really just end things. And, you know, to me, it says, okay, talk to somebody and say, hey, I'm going to take Thankful and Bone Ripper. He's a real, you know, stomper. So maybe, are you going to take something that strong? If not, I'll take a different guy.
Yeah, right. I think that's just a general statement that we should probably clarify with any of these reviews, is for when it comes to named characters, the unique characters, that is part of the social contract. I know that some people that are already looking to create some escalation leagues or organized events or whatnot, which is a challenge for another discussion. But one of the things that some people are comping out already is the idea of any of these uniques. So that should go without saying. But in terms of the comparison with some of the other guys, I think he's the apex of the Skaven special characters.
Yeah, absolutely. He knows 3 spells, including Scorch, which is really good. More mortal wounding. He also he also absorbs all the spells of any Skaven wizard within 13 inches of him, which is insanity because there are a lot of Skaven wizards.
Yeah.
So, I mean, and this guy gets to reroll his casting attempts 84% of the time. So, and he casts 2 spells a turn, one more than a normal caster. So, again, he is a baller in every phase of the game, is what it's going to boil down to. So, yeah, great.
Yeah, well, I look forward to seeing him on the other side of the table when I've gotten a gash. That's pretty much how it's going to work.
Sure.
All right, let's move on to the next one.
Okay, so the Skaven Grey Seer. Would you like to take this one?
Sure. Now, the Gray Seer, now, first of all, this is something that we'll see a lot more of. We're looking at 5 wounds. He's got a very respectable move of 6, which is pretty standard through the Skaven. By the way, for anybody, just as a foreshadowing, Skaven are fast, and they're fast for a lot of reasons, especially when we get to some of the units. And I've already played like 3 games, I think. Yeah, 3 games already with Skaven and learned just how fast they can be. Low bravery is pretty standard, except for some of this stuff. And as a Gray Seer, that's a pretty low bravery. But I'm not really concerned about a low bravery on an individual model, because bottom line is it really doesn't come into play unless it's a comparison type ability versus your bravery, which some abilities will be, like some of the screaming like abilities, for instance. But you're not going to have to worry about battle shock with a single model with a low bravery, because if you're dead, you're dead. It doesn't make a difference. Let's see. So you can summon a tide of voracious rats with his Vermintide spell, and this has got a casting value of 6. That's really, really reasonable. But the range is 26 inches, and it's an enemy unit within 26 inches. And this is one of those situations where you roll for each model on the and it suffers a mortal wound for each result of 6 that you roll. Now, there are some mechanics for some of these things where as you take wounds, it replaces it with models from the Skaven list. It doesn't look like that's the case for this one. I do like this command ability. Underlings will not flee, must fight. This is one of those ways that where Skaven with their lower bravery can really they can overcome that, because if you're within range of this, it's within 24 inches. Anytime you take any casualties from battle shock, you would have to first roll on this, for this ability, this command ability, which has to be enacted, by the way. And you can mitigate that, because now you can basically say, no, they're more scared of me than they are of you, bad guys. And I think that's a really cool mechanic to try and reduce some of the deficiencies that the Skaven do have. And I think it's one of those things that we're going to see in other units as well.
Yeah, effectively, you're trading out your Inspiring Presence, making one unit immune to battle shock, right? To making all of the units in a bubble ignore 50% of battle shock.
Yeah, and 26 inches is a long range.
It is. So but that's the trade-off, right? So you go from, but I mean, if you're only in one combat, who cares, right? Then you would be obviously use Inspiring Presence. But it's a nice alternate ability. If you've got a lot of combats going on, this is a better choice, because you can reduce all your battle shock losses by half.
Yeah, and I want to throw out just one comment about what William Page keeps bringing up, which is the rule of odd. Don't charge with evens, because then battles tend to be, when you take turns, if you get the first turn. If you have even numbers, there's a greater chance that your combats are going to be fair in terms of the kind of wounds that are done. But if the odd charges, you have to charge with 1 or 3 or 5 and so on to get those amount of units into combat. Otherwise, you're giving too many opportunities for your opponent on your turn to be able to strike back. So just something to consider. But this is a way in multiple combats to really, really keep the Skaven in it. I like it. I like the fact that he's got a pretty good ability to wound. He's got die 3 wounds, which is nice for any individual character. So he can stick in there with 5 wounds, only 5 plus save, not bad. How do you think the Gray Seer compares as a utility in the Skaven army versus what you saw in 8th edition?
He's worse than his old version, but undoubtedly worse than his old version. Old Gray Seers were the center point of your army, but that's okay. I actually don't mind that. Yeah. That is to say, before, when you lost your Gray Seer, you're dead. Now he's a smaller component of a larger thing. And
I think that overall is an improvement on the army. So that idea, yeah. All right, let's move on. Let's go to the next one.
Oh, the bell. Oh, goodness sakes.
You can take the bell, but we have lots to talk about it with the bell.
All right, I'll try to be quick with this thing, because it's so huge. All right, so this thing does so much stuff. It's a monster, obviously. It has the chart. It still has all its thing. It comes with a Gray Seer on it. Okay. So it's not like a separate thing. and he gets a different spell because he's on top of this thing. It is pushed into battle, so its speed is affected by the number of rats around it. And I will say it can really get moving if it's got a lot of Skaven around it, because it doesn't move much at all normally. It's kind of slow. It's 4-inch move. But if you've got a horde of Skaven around this thing, man, it can really get going. The Warpstone Brazier's cool. -1 to casting attempts to within 6 inches. I mean, goodness sakes, that's close. Subtracting anything from casting rolls is titanic. But that being said, it's super short range. The Peel of Doom with the oft dumb combination that was pulled out of people saying you could make Kairos set this to 13 and immediately win the game. Let's just ignore that. That's dumb. That's not how it works. Yeah. I don't even want to get into that controversy because that's just silliness. So instead, we'll focus on the actual rolls you can achieve on 2d6. And yeah, they're fun. I mean, obviously on Snake Eyes, bad things happen to you. But other than that, man, you get a lot of cool stuff. And on Boxcars, you get a Vermin Lord, which is pretty awesome. The guy on top can Crack's Call, which, works a lot like its old version in that it can just kill things because it does mortal wounds. Again, that mortal wound thing. So, pretty nice. And then finally, the Altar of the Horned Rat. Basically, he gets his new command ability, which, I mean, is okay. You take everybody. Basically, your whole army has one more move and one more bravery. Like, overall, I'm honestly pretty, meh about its command ability. But that's okay. Its real power is in the ringing of the bell, which actually does stuff now.
Yeah, and cool. I like the diversity of the different things that it does. I also like the fact that even though it's kind of small, it has a mechanic very similar to the old edition, which is the number of rats nearby can increase its move rate, and that can go. I think it can be like 14 inches if you have a goodly number of rats listed there. So it can really boogie. And the other thing is Crack's Call. Crack's Call is pretty severe. So once this thing starts getting close, if you try to engage this thing, it's one of those comparison type things where you exceed a characteristic or not. It's not a it's a characteristic. Move is a characteristic. And you start to you can dictate. You can dish out a number of mortal wounds based on the difference of a roll within its range. That can be pretty devastating when you try to surround this thing and do some serious damage to it.
Absolutely. Yeah,
and solid. Let's just address the fact that if you do roll a 13, which is impossible on a 2d6, it does say instant victory. I think that's just a wink and a nod. It's one of those silly things that they add in there, and I find it hysterical that people are trying to utilize that. You're right. Well, let's not debate it, but I think it's still funny, and we see that throughout the PDF. I think it's really cool that they throw that in there, even though it's technically not possible to roll a 13.
It is comical, and this is a game, and we should remember to have fun. And 13 is sweet, so there you go. Yeah, I have no issue with it.
Okay, let's go to Screech.
Oh boy, we should just take all if we could spend a half hour on the Vermin Lords alone.
Yeah, you know what I want to do? We can come back to them if we have time. Why don't we skip over to some of the troops?
Yeah, so the long story short on the Vermin Lords. I mean, we can come back to them, but I'll just sum this up in case we don't get a chance to come back. They're all pretty decent. They all do some good stuff that looks a lot like their old version. So, for example, Screech has Dreaded 13th, and they're all big monsters. They are all very acceptable, massive 12-wound monsters, right? None of them jumped out to me as wow, totally ridiculously over the top, but also none of them are bad. They all have fun purposes. As with the last one, honestly, my favorite one is this guy, the Deceiver, just because he has that fun Doomstar, and that's a lot of fun. And he can skitter leap, and skitter leaping movement, obviously extremely important in Age of Sigmar, and he can jump around the board, which is cool.
So why don't we go to the Warlord and pick it up from there?
Sure. We can skip the rest of these special characters too.
Yeah, if we have time, we'll go back to them. I think that again, they're special characters. Yeah. I want to try and discuss really kind of the meat and bones of the army, and then again we'll come back to that the named guys.
Absolutely. I think this one's yours then, right? The
No,
Skaven Warlord?
go ahead. No, I'll tell you why I'm going to go out of order, because I want to talk about the Battle Standard Bearer.
I knew you did, you cheater. I was trying to get that one too. All right, that's fine.
Well, you know what? No, you're the guest, so we can stick to it.
No, it's your channel. I'll take the Warlord. Okay. So yeah, Skaven Warlord, again, solid 5 wound general. Like he's exactly what you would expect out of a guy like this. He's perfectly good. I actually rather like the warp forged blade. I think that's actually quite a nice option. 3 to hit, 3 to wound. That -2 rend is so massive.
Yes.
Yeah, and D3 damage as well. This like rend is just the currency of Age of Sigmar. Because people with like 3-up armor, if you're running against Stormcaster or like Chaos or people that have these high armors, they are so hard to punch through. And rend -2 is the difference between actually putting some models in the dirt and not. So I have no issue with that. And normally the problem with getting your generals in battle is they're very sensitive, and so that makes me love the strike and scurry away ability. Basically, like after he's attacked, you get to roll a die, and on a 4 or more, he just immediately retreats as though it were the movement phase. That's amazing, and that means he's running 6 inches away, and that sounds pretty great to me. Because he can go run behind other units and throw some chaff in the way or something, I think that's fantastic.
And very Skaven-y. And that happened to me in one of my first games. If anybody's watched any of my early Age of Sigmar videos against the Skaven, one of the scenarios was with the Skaven Warlord, and the guy did that, and I was just like, not only amazed, but just absolutely pleased at the fact that it was so perfect for Skaven, that scurry away.
Yep. So yeah, I mean, I think he's great. I honestly like the Warforged Blade, which is the least number of attacks, because you can actually go War Halberd Bar Blade and he'll spit out 8 attacks. Mm-hmm. But I'd rather have 3 just backbreaker attacks than 8 attacks that skitter off armor. That's my feeling on that.
Yeah, that's a big distinction that I think that a lot of people need to know. In that description on these Warscrolls for units and characters, it does give you the some units do this, some units do that. That's not just some interesting text where you can mix and match. It really is kind of telling you got to decide that when you deploy which set you're using.
Right. Yep, absolutely. And it's funny because that was actually when I've been setting up my games, it's the first thing I do. When I go through and I'm saying what my units are to my opponent, I say, this is my Warlord, he's armed with a Warforged Blade, or something like that, right? It just makes things simpler. Even if the opponent doesn't know what it is, it just, it alleviates any controversy later.
Especially if you're not really that specific about WYSIWYG. And I think that's where we're headed with this game. I mean, there's some units I have that are mixed, where I would put in 8th edition the first row or the first 10 with a certain combo, and the next row would be another combo. I think we're gonna have to be more specific, not just saying those things, but also the modeling is gonna have to be more specific. I think we're gonna see that, especially if there's anything that ever gets organized. Okay, anything more about the Warlord?
His command ability is pure offense, which is nice because it's a good alternative option to the basic command ability, which is basically about defense and not losing guys. So making a bunch of people take extra attacks seems pretty good, especially if you got a ballbuster unit in combat. So yeah, solid.
He's solid. He just he doesn't. There's not a lot of personality, I don't think, in it. I think that one ability, the scurry ability, is pretty much the basis of the Warlord. The fact that you can get in there, do some serious damage, and run away. Otherwise, that's the character of the model. Of the Warscroll.
Yeah, I will say equal to his previous incarnation.
Okay, good. Thank you for including that, because that's one of the things that I definitely want to go through, whether or not it's improved or the utility of it might make it better, even though it might be weaker in terms of its own power and capabilities. The Skaven Chieftain with a battle standard. Now, we both really, really want this one, so I think we're both going to have to do some input. Let's not even go over the fact that as far as the details of it, it's not so impressive. I mean, it's got 4 attacks, decent to hit and wound at 3+, no rend and a single damage. The big key thing here is the treacherous progression. So let's give it over to you. What is the treacherous progression about?
It's how you get ahead in the Skaven, in the world of. It's how to get ahead in advertising or Skaven. You stab the guy above you. Yeah, I love this. If your warlord has 1 wound remaining, and the chieftain's within an inch of him, he can stab him to death, kill him, usurp his position, and most importantly, he suddenly learns all the command abilities known by his former master.
Now, I just want to say one thing about this. It does say can. It doesn't say you do as soon as your chieftain is, your warlord is now at 1 wound. It's not an automatic. It's a decision. Give me some examples of why you would do this or where it might come into play, other than that it's just hysterical to have happen on the table.
You're going to lose your general, right? Which means you're going to lose your command ability, i.e. your inspiring presence. And, like, that's not a great thing. So, like, if in your hero phase, you're staring down a situation where your general's about to die, and you've got a big unit in combat that you know is going to get battle shocked into oblivion this round, yeah, I would, why not kill your general, take that, apply the battle shock thing over to the unit that's going to do it, and then retreat in the movement phase with your battle standard bearer, right? Yeah. He gets out of there and he runs out of the way, and now you're back up to 5. Your guy with inspiring presence and whatever the general had now has 5 wounds again and is back away from the lion safe.
Couldn't have said it better. Excellent. I love that model, that war scroll. Let's move on to Clan Rats. Go, take it away.
Sure. I will also say that actual banner he carries is also amazing, by the way. The Sacred Banner of the Horned Rat is also ridiculously good. But he has to be close to the fight to use it. But there you go. Chieftain better than what he was before. That's what I'll say. Yeah, okay, Clan Rats. So Clan Rats are your standard, sort of garbage troop of the army. The Skaven manufacture garbage troops. You've got the spear for the longer range, but worse to hit, the blade for the shorter range, but better to hit. No rend, whatever. It's not bad. What makes these guys worth anything is the standard bearer. Like, the other things they have are fine, but the standard bearer is what makes it awesome, because that makes it so the unit, if they've got a standard bearer, which of course they're going to, it can retreat and charge in the same turn. And holy crap, is that powerful. Mm-hmm. Because now you're retreating that unit out of combat 6 inches, pulling them in any direction. If your opponent has not wisely closed off your avenues of retreat, that means in my movement phase, I'm going to retreat this unit away 6 inches. I'm going to pull them out of the combat that I don't want them in. Then I'm going to charge them 2d6 inches over at your other sensitive unit, pile in on that, and win that combat, and suddenly I've shifted the entire battlefield around.
Now, the bell charmer does add 2 inches to that move, to standard moves, but it also adds to retreat.
The retreat, yeah,
and that's absolutely because of the rule that you have to, when you retreat, you have to be no closer than 3. You have to be further than 3 inches away from any enemy units. So that 6 inches might not get you very far, but that extra 2 is going to come in handy.
Yep, absolutely. Oh man, they're way better than what they were.
Yeah, and I also want to point out strength in numbers. A lot of the extra abilities that you see with some of these units are at the 10, 20, and 30 mark. Everybody out there who's trying to cap wounds on units, I know that that's a thing. Stop at 24. I mean, don't stop at 24. Get to 30 if you're going to cap wounds on specific units, or make some kind of mechanic to allow it to that. Because some of these units really come into their own at the 30 mark. And I think this is one of them where, when you're at 20 or 30, at 30, you get another +1 to hit and wound. That's a big deal when you have just a flood of these clan rats. I think that's what it's meant for.
Yeah, I agree. I hate this number of models. I do like the 24 cap, but at the same time, here's what I'll say. Play the game you're comfortable with, right? If you're comfortable with having 30 individual guys in a unit and that's not bothersome to you or your table, then yes, allow this to happen. But note, if you do, know what you're doing when you limit it.
I don't think every unit should be that. We probably should do a video on that. I've actually been playing with some ideas of every 10 beyond the first 10 having some kind of a factor where where it applies towards total war scroll cap. This is something we could talk about at another hangout. But even so, that these guys are not meant to just be on the table with just 10. They're meant to be there in a little, at least a little cluster or more, or several of them.
Yep.
Okay, Storm Vermin.
Storm Vermin.
I have gone up against the Storm Vermin and the Clan Rats, and the Storm Vermin impressed the hell out of me. I'll say right off the bat, I think they're better. I think they're better than they were before. They're only one wound. These are the elites in terms of the the ground troops, the infantry troops. But 2 attacks apiece. They may have a glass jaw. I mean, they only get a 5-up save and 1 wound, but they move quick to move. They dish out some good damage in terms of having 2 attacks. They have a respectable 4+ to hit, 3+ to wound. You can't laugh at that. -1 rend is always a good thing, just like you pointed out. Any subtraction to rend, as far as rending is concerned, is a big plus. And with the number of volume of attacks that they're going to get, especially if you take something like 10 or 20 of these guys, that -1 rend is going to add up. In terms of abilities, they also have that ability to retreat and still charge. It seems to be a big trend with the Skaven across the board. So same points as you already pointed out, as well as with their drummer, giving them the extra 2 inches. So then they have the shields so that they can get a little bit of extra defense against any attacks that are only a single damage. So anything that does like die 3 or 2 or whatever, they won't get that. But then when it comes to their murderous ferocity, add 1 to the to-hit rolls for Storm Vermin if they target a unit that has fewer models than its own. This is huge against monsters, individual beast-type characters, these really big characters, or any of these big war machine types. And when you consider the fact, again, multiple attacks, there's lots of them, they outnumber you even by just 1, and it could be pile-up of those rends. They may only do 1 wound, but they are going to be causing lots of armor saves, which are going to fail. They're going to do some damage to you.
Yep.
And the last thing, 2-inch range.
Yeah. They're very solid. I think they work best in about like their 10 group size. Because at 10, you can, like, when they can pick on the smaller elite units that come out in 5s, individual characters, monsters, they're great at that. The balance against them with Clan Rats is Clan Rats are better if you've got 30 of them running around, or 40 of them, right? Because then those guys are hitting on 3s and wounding on 2s, and they're just this massive rat, wave across the board. But these guys are truly, they're Storm Vermin or standout. I think they're a great choice in like a 10-pack, something like that.
Right. I don't think that we would want to see them in the 40 block that we might have seen them in 8th, but I think multiple units of 10 would be very scary with that, especially with that the ability to retreat and charge.
Oh yeah, they'll hunt down monsters and just do some real damage to them, right?
Okay, Skaven slaves, take it away.
Oh, the slaves. All right, so I like the slaves. They're fun. They're awful, god-awful when it comes to like their actual attacks, as well they should be. Their spear is 6-up, 4-up, or 5-up, 4-up for their blade. No rend, of course, anywhere. They do not have the ability to, do the retreat and stuff and recharge. They do have still the bell timer thing of the extra 2 inches, which is nice. And, they have the crappy shields, whatever, that's fine. I mean, obviously, the advantage to these guys is twofold. One, they actually come with a ranged weapon, and ranged weapons, even those that hit on a 5 and wound on a 5, are pretty good, right? Like, let's not underestimate or undervalue the power of ranged weapons in this game. But as well, I do love their cornered rat unit, or cornered rat ability, because, again, it's just more mortal wounding. Basically, whenever they fail bravery checks and they start fleeing, so you never want to inspiring presence these guys, basically. If you roll a 6, they just instantly mortal wound the nearest unit within 6 inches of them, which is probably most often the enemy they were fighting, obviously. Not always, but most often. I mean, given the one that you're picking who flees, you can make it that way. So they're a lot of fun. They can deal some more mortal wounds on the way out. They're an interesting balance. It's funny that they have no mechanic that makes them good in numbers.
Oh, yeah, I didn't notice that. Very
right.
interesting.
The rats and the vermin all have reasons. The storm vermin have kind of reasons to have some kind of numbers. These guys don't. The only thing they've got is that they have to have at least 20 models. Right? That's their min unit you put on the board, which I find humorous. But they don't have like at 30 they get better. So I think they're okay at 20 for their slings. Like, you use them for their sling ability to just go in there and target something.
And for area control. Yeah.
Yeah, because they can spread out and get that done. And when you lose them, it's like they still have a chance to do some damage on the way out.
Yeah.
Now, worse than their old version, because obviously old Skaven slaves were busted ridiculous because at 2 points they were the best target in the game.
Yeah,
So,
but there's still a role for these guys. It's a different game,
oh yeah,
but yes.
yeah. I'm not saying they're bad. I'm
Yeah.
saying that it's hard to be better than the best tar pit in the old edition of the game. Right? I mean, so, what are we comparing here?
Yeah.
I would like to just, I know we're skipping special characters, but if I can just take a quick moment to give a mad props here to my boy Ikit Claw.
Go for it.
My favorite special character, the inventor of power armor. Still rocking that 3-up save just like he was in the old edition because he is wearing power armor. Make no mistake. Before Stormguard were rocking or allegedly were Space Marines, this guy was the first Space Marine with his servo arms and power armor. He's fantastic, and he also casts 2 spells. This guy is just sweet. I love Warp Storm. I love the lightning thing with him. Ikit's claw, his power claw, make no mistake. Again, that's what it is. With -2 Ren and 3 damage, and then Storm Demon with a longer range and -1 and D3 wounds. This guy is so sweet. Such character, such flavor. I love everything about him, and it's just fantastic.
I wonder if anybody's going to do a conversion with him in actual old school Space Marine power armor with the power claw, with the lightning claw.
I should pick up an extra Liberator and put him into that and model him with that.
I want to see that.
Hold on, I'm noting that down as something, a conversion that's got to happen. I have an Ikit Claw model that I spent just hours on, and I love him to death. He's beautiful, but who cares that? I'll make a second one.
Yeah, because if we do see the dreaded, I use the word dreaded very, very clearly here. It's intentional. But the potential of the merging of 40K with fantasy, maybe Ikit Claw was the person who invented power armor. Maybe he really is.
Yeah, you heard it here first.
All right.
All right. Warlock Engineer, I'll give it to you.
I really hope that's not the case, but you know what? If it is, hey, that's what it is. Just have to deal with it. All right, so Warlock Engineer. First of all, if you're into the steampunky look of Skaven, this is the guy you want to put on the table. This is among one of the many. I love the Warlock pistol. I also really like the mechanic. He has the ability to cast Warp Lightning, and it's a very low casting cost of 5, which is amazing. It's an 18-inch range. Unit suffers die 3 mortal wounds. Here's the thing, though. He can supercharge it. So this is one of those scenarios where it's in terms of low risk but high reward if you take that risk. If you declare, and this happened to me in one of the games I played against Skaven, if you declare that you're going to supercharge that Warp Lightning and it succeeds, if you get the casting off, you then do, instead of die 3 mortal wounds, die 6 mortal wounds, which is crippling. It's mortal wounds, no saves, except for those very few special units that get saves against it. However, if you fail, you take a mortal wound. Now, let's be honest. Die 6 mortal wounds against you, or I take 1 mortal wound. I don't think that there's any question that you're going to supercharge that sucker every time you have a chance.
And that's what I love about this. They incentivized you properly with this. It's so good. Because you talked about the risk reward. They incentivized it just right that I want to do this with all of my things every time, which means it's going to happen. Like I will blow myself up. Yes, great. The incentive, Skaven wouldn't do it if it was 50-50, right? Because that doesn't make sense. They'd all be dead. But it's not 50-50. It's incentivized that you do want to do it. And that means it will happen to you. You will fry your own guys. You will eat your own shards and wound yourself, warpstone shards. You will do all these. You will overcharge everything. And that means chaos will reign. And that's what the beauty of Skaven is. The incentives are perfect on this, if you ask me.
Okay, so let's move to the weapon teams. Now, we can probably zip through the weapon teams pretty quickly. Is there one of the weapon teams that specifically stands out amongst the others?
The Rattling Gun.
Yeah, I figured that's what you're going to say. Okay, good. Let's go talk about the Rattling Gun.
18-inch range, 2d6 shots. However, it goes up to 4d6 if you overcharge, which all of them have that same overcharge mechanic, where you roll a die, and if you roll a 1, they do d3 mortal wounds themselves. So they stand a high chance of killing them. Well, not a high chance. They stand a 33% chance of killing themselves. But on a 2 or more, you do 4d6 shots. 4d6 shots, hitting on 4s, wounding on 4s, -1 rend. I mean, that's a lot of hot warp lead.
And if you're right up in front of your opponent within 9 inches, it's one of the few times I see that the range has an impact. You get a +1 to your roll to hit.
Yep.
Yeah. pretty good. I think that when you consider the range and the amount of damage, that is the weapon team that stands out. Okay, Poison Wind Mortar team is also a team. All right, let's go to Poison Wind Globadiers. That's where I wanted to head. Now, I have seen these back when I used to play before I took my hiatus between editions, and I have not seen them at all anywhere in 8th edition. So I'm only hoping that they have improved and they're worthy to be on the table, because I love the idea of these guys.
It would be impossible for them to get worse. You didn't see them because I didn't battle report my Buckeye battles, but I had these guys in my Swedish list.
Did you really? Oh.
If you're trying to reach comp 17.3, you got to find the bottom of the barrel fast, okay. Especially in Skaven. But at any rate, yeah. So, by the way, for people who've been longtime Skaven players, you may remember a time when their wind globes threw the small template around as opposed to just hitting individual models. That used to be a thing. They were good then when they all hurled small templates. Yeah. Oh, were they good then? Yeah. But anyways, let's talk about them in 8th edition compared to this. 9-inch range, they throw one globe, hit on a 4, wound on a 4, so statistically 25% of your shots land. I mean, that's how that boils out. It's very easy math. But rend, neg 2, and damage D3. And I love you can add 1 to the hit rolls if they've got 10 or more models, because obviously how can you miss? And they can shoot at enemies not visible to it. It's great. Yeah, these guys are fantastic. It's going to be rare that you can't see something that's 9 inches away from you. I mean, it's so short, but if they're on the other side of a completely blocking piece of small terrain, that's kind of neat that you can hurl them over the wall. These guys are way better than what they used to be. One small note, their armor got worse. Poison Wind Globadiers were one of the few units where they actually wore heavy armor all the time. Really? These guys were walking around in heavy armor because they had all their gear for their wind globes. So they actually were troops running around in heavy armor, which was a rare thing.
They kind of look like World War I with the gas masks.
Yes.
Which I thought they just look awesome.
Yes. But their save got worse. But that's okay. Still, yeah, I mean, whatever. Incredibly susceptible to battle shock. Don't let these guys take wounds. But they're great glass cannons.
Great. I do want to mention, let's see, we see Sajil says that Skaven slaves, you want them in high numbers so that failing the bravery test doesn't matter. You treat each model basically as a mortal wound to inflict. Good point. Yeah, that's totally why you want to come. Okay, so Warlock Giselles. Paul Kierhart made a comment that these are stupid good, and I love that. I love Giselles. They've kind of risen and fallen in terms of effectiveness, but the amount of damage you can kick out with these is tremendous, especially considering the range, 30-inch range. All right, it's only 4 up to hit, which is a little bit less than it's a little bit worse than some of these to hits. But the bottom line, 3 to wound, but -2 rend, 2 wounds each. Okay, you take a unit of 3 of these, you can drop a character. The standard character wounds is usually around 5. You could drop a character pretty capably with these guys, and they have a respectable hand-to-hand attack because they get 2 attacks, even though they need 5 to wound and 5 to hit and 4 to wound, and only 1 damage, no rend. They still get 2 attacks. That's key. But of course, you're not taking these guys so they can get a hand-to-hand. You're taking them so they can shoot things from a distance and snipe out characters and war machines.
Yeah, Paul K is right. My boy Paul knows what he's talking about. These guys are brutality. Because they also add 1 to hit, keep in mind, if they don't move. Yep. So, that means that they're hitting on 3, wounding on a 3 with that -2 rend and 2 damage. Giselles have had a long and storied history, 36-inch range, longer range maybe in 1 edition, strength 5, but they were warpstone weapons, but they did D3 wounds. I mean, they've been all over the board as far as what their effectiveness was. The only thing I'm sad about here, I love that if you roll a 6 or more to hit, you don't make a wound roll. They just take 2 mortal wounds, again, for mortal wound magic. I mean, these guys are so freaking good. The only thing I'm sad about here is that they didn't incorporate the most reliable weapon. Giselles have classically had this thing where they were the quote-unquote most reliable Skaven weapon, where if you rolled a 1 to hit, they wounded themselves, or something like that. Like that was the only chance they had to do it. In the most recent edition, it was if you rolled a 1 and another 1. I would have liked to see a little nod to that so they could shoot themselves, but whatever.
All right. Well, I still think that they are more capable and more effective and more of an inclusion choice than they were, at least in 8th edition.
Oh, 100% better. Yes.
Okay, you get the Doom Wheel.
Oh my God, love the Doom Wheel. So Warp Lightning, 13-inch range, down from its old 18-inch. But you know, more wounds. This thing is all over the board. More wounds, less move, same save. Okay. Warp Lightning, shorter range, but you know, D6 attacks, 4 to hit, 4 to wound. So statistically, by the way, that's 1. That means you get 1 out of that. So every time the Warp Lightning shoots off, statistically, you get 1 wound, doing an average of 2 wounds. Or 2 damage. So there you go. That's the math on that. So its shooting is obviously much worse than what it used to be. I mean, this thing was just insane in the old game as far as shooting goes.
Yeah.
You know, park in the middle of 3 monsters and watch there be 0 monsters at the end of that turn, probably. That being said, it's still quite good. It can roll over people. I like its rolling Doom thing. It's just D3 mortal wounds, just cranking out them mortal wounds. And it can move through units, which is cool. It doesn't have to heed the 3-inch roll when it moves. And like you might think, well, with 2d6, that's you're still not allowed to end within. But what I do love is that you can go to run faster, so you can actually roll double your 2d6, which means that this thing could truck. Right? I mean, this thing could travel, at best case, 24 inches in a single round. Pretty sweet.
Yes. Okay, moving on to Warp Lightning Cannons. 24-inch range, so it's not the full battlefield like it used to be, which is the case with a lot of the cannons in the game, but still very effective. I think it's got a weird mechanic. I do like the fact that it can move. I like the fact that a lot of cannons and a lot of War Machine type things can move. It does gain a little bit of an extra save if it doesn't move. Instead of a 5-up, you'll get a 6-up for shooting. Excuse me, you get a 4-up for shooting in terms of protection. The way it shoots is you roll a die, and you have to then meet or exceed that die. And if you do exceed it, then that's the number of mortal wounds that the opponent takes, which is still, again, mortal wounds. So if you roll a 2, you're basically going to get anywhere from 2 to 6 wounds that you're going to dish out on your opponent, and that's just scary.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I don't know if we said it, but Doom Wheel is probably worse than what it was in the previous edition. Still
okay.
fun.
I think warp cannons are still just as effective. I think the range. The range was much less than 24 inches. Much more than 24 inches.
It was 48. Yeah.
Yeah. So the fact that it can move and still shoot, but the fact that it's mortal wounds, I don't think makes this any less effective. You're definitely going to want to take at least one of these.
Oh, I think it's fantastic. Yeah, and the fact that it just hits, it just does it.
It's an auto hit. That's right. You get within 24 inches, you are taking this damage.
Yes.
Okay, you get Storm Fiends.
All right. Oh God. These things. All right. So these monsters.
This is crazy.
I mean, so many different weapon options. I mean, all right. Where do we even begin? All of the shooting options are pretty good. Let's just start there. Okay. I don't think any of them are honestly bad. The warp fire projectors are pretty redonk. Because everyone is just causing 2d3 mortal wounds on a unit within 8 inches. Instantly melt a monster, right? I mean, that's... See you later.
Carnage!
Yeah. I do still like the Grinder Fist Tunnelers. I think those are really cool because they the ability to suddenly deep strike up, basically from below, is quite powerful. And so I think that's still quite good.
Especially considering their ranges. The ranges are not table. They're like 12 to 16 inches on their most powerful abilities. Yeah.
Yes, I very much like the shortened range on the rattling cannons. Moving them down from their old world of 18 inches to 12 brings those rattling cannons much better within reason. Because again, 3d6. So again, let's run the math. Everybody looks at this and it sounds crazy. 3d6 shots. Okay, that's an average of 11 shots. Hit on 4, wound on 4. All right, so that means you get 25% of those through. So let's say 3 wounds at -1 red, right? I mean, that's the end result of shooting. Not terrible, and not at all. That's still pretty good. But again, it's pretty close up. Honestly, I think the wind launchers are probably a better bet now because they're more accurate because they can go up to the hitting on 3. They have that -2 rend and they do D3 damage. I believe in the power of rend and multi-damage. I just think it's better, and they've got the longer range.
Well, just let's also realize that that's per model.
Yes,
and you're
per
gonna
guy.
have a minimum of 3 on these guys.
Yep.
And let's also consider that in the rules, the way it reads is that you have a lot more freedom in terms of picking targets and splitting your fire. These guys could tunnel in the midst of your army. Basically, you still have to maintain some kind of distance from an opponent, but you go and you get into a certain part of the table with your deep strike, with your tunneling ability. I hate the word deep strike, but in any case, you get in there, and then you could command a huge swath of territory in terms of shooting and just blow stuff up, especially things that might be in the backfield, like characters, wizards, and war machines.
Yep, absolutely. For melee, it's got to be the Doomflayer gauntlets. Yep. I love them. The extra 1 to hit when you charge. The fact that you average the same number of attacks as all the other weapons, but you could get as many as 6. I mean, you could also get 2, but whatever. And just so you're on 2s to hit, 3s to wound, -2 rend, D3 damage. Don't get me wrong, the other ones are good. They really are. Like the Shock Gauntlet's ability to spark off and do D6 extra hits is not terrible. Certainly, there's good synergy there if you have other things that are adding to hit in the army, right? So, like, that's one of those things where synergy is the thing, because it's if you get a 6 or more. So if you have other things that are adding 1 to hit, well, then suddenly those might become a better option. But just in the void, it's got to be the Doomflayers.
Yeah, I think these guys give you the best combination of ranged and melee. They're just beasts. They get 6 wounds apiece too. They're just one of those fantastic includes. Just 3 of these guys will give your opponent fits.
Absolutely. We can skip the special characters here.
Yep.
Go into the. By the way, I have maybe 10 minutes just so we time check.
All right. So let's go right into Pack Masters and Giant Rats. How are these guys different from how they would be used in the previous edition?
They're on their own now, as opposed to just being like sitting there, and it just being the sort of necessary addition to a rat ogre dart or a rat pack, right? Like now they actually have some purpose to walk around alone. And again, I rather like these guys on their own. I think that they're okay. They do some neat stuff. Yeah, they're interesting as a little individual pseudo character. The double the bravery thing is neat. I mean, keep in mind they're usually doubling 3 to like 6 or 4 to 8 or something. So it's not a huge thing that they're doubling that bravery, but it's not nothing. The fact is, most of the things that they're inspiring are probably losing models by the truckload. That is to say, giant rats, stuff like that they're going to die in bucket loads. But I mean, rat ogres who are also Molder certainly aren't dropping like flies. So that's a much more useful ability for them. The herded into the fray, the adding 1 to hit, that is straight bonkers when we get to giant rats. Like straight bonkers, because a single Packmaster. I mean, I'll just jump ahead and say it now. So giant rats hit on 5, wound on 5, have no rend and do 1 damage. Terrible, garbage unit. However, if you've got 30 of them, they add 3 to their hit rolls and make 3 attacks. If there's a Packmaster running around behind them, right, and he has chosen them to be herded, they hit on all of them. They hit on all. They hit on all their attacks.
Yeah, I could see that there's probably going to be one of those initial comps is going to be one's always miss, 6 always. One's what is it? Always hit, 6 always. Oh God, I'm brain cramping here. Where 1s and 6s are not going to be the automatics that they are now. But like with armor saves, for instance, sure. You can't have 1-ups. You have to have fails on 1. This is one of those situations where you can definitely get to that right now, unless that's changed or people comp it out, and that's pretty scary.
Yeah, all attacks hitting, especially when they're pumping out 3 attacks apiece, and there's 30 of them. That's scary.
Yeah. I'm going to jump to rat swarms. I love the rat swarms, and it's not that there's anything special about them other than the fact that they grow and grow and grow. Every one of your hero phases, you get to automatically add another model of rat swarms. So you Skaven players out there, start getting some of your round or square or hexagonal or whatever diagram you like, whatever geometric formation of bases you like, make more rat swarms, because if you only have a couple of them from your 8th edition days, you want more now, because every round, every turn, and there's nothing that says the game has to be 6 turns. There's some scenarios that do that, but some games can go quite a bit longer, and that means that if you could keep these guys survive or take a couple of these as choices, you might have large swaths of rat swarms by the end of the game.
Yeah, absolutely true.
All right, make whatever comment you want, and then let's move on to rat ogres.
Actually, useful and interesting now. I mean, obviously, if they die completely, they're not coming back. You're not getting any rat form, but as long as there's one, there's going to be more.
Okay.
Rat ogres. So rat swarms, let's say, better, but they were garbage before. You're right. I only have 2. Need to model some more. Rat ogres. Yeah, I love rat ogres now. Fantastic. Love that they got the added ranged option. There was a lot of them that had like modeled sort of pseudo guns on their arms and stuff. I love that they put that back on. The thing certainly isn't an amazing shooting weapon at hitting on a 5 and wounding on a 3, but it's not terrible either. I mean, it's neg 1 rend and d3 damage, so that's fairly sexy, and a decent range on that, 16 inches. And they have the I make a bunch of extra attacks rule, which is cool. The sort of like frenzied, roll more on 6s thing. Yeah, they're solid all the way through. 4 attacks at 4 and 3, neg 1 rend and 2 damage. They're meaty and good now.
Better or worse?
Definitely better. And also, just to call back to that bravery 5 is going to double to a bravery 10, right? If they're near a packmaster. At that point, they're fairly immune to battle shock, given how many you probably have out there, right? Just like you couldn't lose enough without losing the unit to actually battle shock.
All right, let's go to Hell Pit Abomination. I know we both going to have a lot of input on this. This thing is an abomination, and I'm glad that it's still a beefy, crazy thing that you just absolutely have to include, mostly because all the legacy Skaven players are going to have 1 or 2 at least. So the thing I like about this, it regenerates, so it's going to heal die 3 wounds at the end of each of your hero phases, which is very appropriate. I also like the fact that it has a negative impact on casting to any non-chaos wizards within, was it 12 inches?
12 inches,
yeah. And that's a nice feature of itself, and it can return from the death. Apart from all the attacks that it has that diminish in effectiveness as you wound this thing, it's got 12 wounds. It's got a random move, just like you saw in the previous edition. It also has the ability to come back alive, just like in the previous edition. So they kept that craziness going. You destroy this thing once, there's a chance it's going to come back and haunt you again.
Yeah, better chance now too.
Much better, right? It was on a 6 before, right?
Yeah, that's correct.
Now it's what? It's a 5/6.
Yep.
Okay. Let's see, Plague Priests.
Versus last edition versus this edition. The old Hell Pit was better. It could win whole games by itself sometimes. But, I mean, this thing is still hyper strong, and I think the reality is you don't want to take an undamaged Hell Pit into your unit. That is going to be a bad day.
All right, let's see. Plague Priest.
Easily better. There you go. I'll say it out of the top, because you couldn't be worse. Right. Again, these guys were terrible. And, like, this is the thing, I don't remember the last time I saw a Plague Priest. Like, ugh, who cares? They were overcosted. They were just terrible. Now, very solid. Obviously, they're garbage in combat, but that's not their point. They're there for those pestilent prayers, which is sweet. We got our own warrior priests. Yes, the copying of the Empire continues even into the Age of Sigmar, as now we have our own warrior priests. And yeah, it's awesome. The Pestilent Breath, free mortal wounds, deal. Wither, rerolling rolls to wound, also deal. Like, both of these are great, and you just, like, whatever. Again, on a 3-up it takes place, on a 1 he takes a mortal wound. I'm doing that every time. Every time.
Cool. I want to talk about a lot of these other ones, but I just don't think you're going to have the time. So let's jump over to the Assassins, and hopefully we can get into the Knight and Gutter Runners before you get a bolt.
Let me also say one brief thing on Plague Monks.
Sure.
These guys are one of the things that I'm most disappointed in.
Okay.
They, of all the units, these are the only ones I look at and go, I don't want to put those on the table. They have all these different crazy abilities, and none of them grab me. I'm sure maybe somebody disagrees with me, Maybe there's some stuff they look at that's fine, but I look at this and I'm just like, I would rather have Storm Vermin on the table every time.
That's too bad because Plague Monk's pretty scary too in the last edition. And I have not looked through the rules on this one myself, I have to admit.
Yeah. The Plague Claw Catapult, by the way, is however a standout. Yeah. This is another thing where it was terrible in the old edition. In this one, thumbs up on this guy.
Okay, let's take a look at it real quick then.
Sure.
6 to 31 inches, die 6 damage. Nice.
Make 2 rend. Absolutely. If it's shooting at more than 10 models, it hits on a 2. So, don't hate that. And the damage on the shot is increased to 2d6.
Oh, no.
So, woof.
New Nurgle units find the toxic payloads showering them rather refreshing and only suffer damage from a Plague Claw Catapult shooting attack on a wound roll of 6 or more.
Yeah, I assume that's like a solid bone chunk actually hitting them in the skull as opposed to the toxin.
Got it. That's great.
Yeah.
All right, Assassins.
Yes.
All right. I've already had an experience with these guys, and these mofos are rough. They are rough. This one took out my White King in a turn, and they are brutal. The fact that they still can hide in units and pop out when you need them to, and they do dish out some good damage. The Weeping Blades at die 3 -1 rend, and there's let's be honest, 3 attacks, 3 to hit, 3 to wound. That's absolutely phenomenal. Okay, those -1 rends are going to add up. Die 3 damage is going to add up. They can do. They're a character killer.
Sure.
Maybe not a top end character or an uber character, but the general standard characters, they are going to do what they are supposed to do and assassinate.
Yes, that's great. Their mechanics absolutely suit that. Hidden rule is still the hidden rule. It's pretty solid. I think the only thing I'm sad about with these guys is they don't have a clever little retreat rule. That is what I wish that. I wish that they had a way to sort of like retreat easily like the other Skaven do. But other than that, I like these guys a lot.
I would say that that's pretty fluffy, though. The fact that they don't means that they're not getting away. They're in there to do their job or die trying, which is not very Skaven-y. Maybe that's not very Skaven-y. That's assassin-y, but not Skaven-y.
Sure.
Okay, Knight and Gutter Runners.
Yes.
Let's distinguish between these two guys.
Yeah, so here's the easy distinction. If you if you saw some Night Runners on a table in 8th edition, you were playing at a weird table. That is what I will say, because that didn't happen. They are interesting in what they're the difference between these two units. The Night Runners, so for people who, again, remember the long history of the Skaven, the Night Runners were a more recent creation, right? Gutter Runners were previously this thing that have kind of always been around. But then they just made this cheaper unit called Night Runners. And that's... and they've always struggled to differentiate themselves. And I'm not sure that they did a great job with it, even in this.
I agree. I think there's this very little difference. The one thing that I think is big about these two units is run and shoot. They are fast movers, 7 inches. You can run with the extra die 6 and still shoot. I ran up against a game where I outnumbered my opponent. He, as a Skaven, was at a disadvantage. It's one of my videos that's up. And I had a much larger skeleton-oriented force of undead. And his goal was to try and take down my general. And these friggin' guys, these little packs of these dudes of 10, he had like 4 of these packs, different ones. He had a combination of these 2, and they were just running all over the damn board and shooting me up. And it was actually very, very surprising at how effective they can be.
Yeah. So like the thing with Night Runners, the advantage to them is if you have a very specific strategy, because they get their extra free move at the start of the game. Mm-hmm. If you know you're going to go first, which you can decide by stopping first, right? Then that means they can you can set them up, move them, and get them into range of their shots, right? So that like between your move and your run, you will be in range to use your throwing stars and slings on them. At the top of 1, which is an interesting strategy. Probably the only use I can think of for them. Gutter Runners are really their superior in just about every way. And the one thing I really wanted to call out with Gutter Runners that I had noticed, I'm not sure if other people noticed, the minimum unit size on gutter runners.
Mm-hmm.
3. That's amazing. So if you're playing a sudden death strategy, man, these guys are aces because you can get that normal unit that's still highly effective, and put almost no models on the table when doing it.
All right, so I think we should just finish off with some of the formation packs, which I love. I want to see more of. I think this is the way that the game is going to go. I think if we ever see a competitive or organized type effort, that's what we're going to be seeing. We're going to see stuff that's going to be not just org charts, but things along these lines that are going to break maybe even some org chart rules. Rather than points, it's going to be these types of formation Warscrolls. So what are your thoughts? Have you looked at these? I can't imagine that you haven't, but have you looked at these? Or there's any standouts that really caught your eye? Like this is the one I want to put on the table.
I like all of them. I think they're pretty interesting things going on. I mean, like, I don't know. It's the Verminous Claw pack is just like, hey, let's build a standard Skaven army, right? Nothing about it sort of super jumped out at me. It basically lets you play with a lot of the old Skaven rules, like lead from the back, the Verminous Valor, and then it gives your weapon teams lookout serves, which, hey, that's cool. I dig that. It makes a reason for your weapon teams to act like they used to, right, where they had to be kind of next to a unit.
Right.
The Molder Claw pack is good. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's fine, but it's not really a whole army, right? It could be. I mean, it certainly is fine. You could have just pack masters and stuff.
I don't think any of these are really just whole armies. I think they can be, but I think they could be. You could combine some of these too.
Oh, sure. Yeah. I'm just like, when I'm thinking about it, like, what do I want to build an army around? You know what I'm saying?
Right.
To me, the one that I really love is the Eshin one, just because I've always loved the Eshin one. Okay. Because it takes your Eshin guys and kicks them up to 11, because now they all reroll their failed wound rolls when they're dealing with smaller units. So now, whoa, those Night Runners that are running around in big blocks, hey now, we got some rerolls. That's sexy. And that's sprint and strike. So we've talked about how the Gutter and the Night Runners have the run and shoot. Now they also gain run and charge. And man, now you're just banging on all cylinders, because those guys are already fast. If we go back up and look at these guys, their movement is 7. They've always been faster than the normal rats. So now you're running 7 plus a d6, still shooting and still charging.
Yeah, this is the formation that I went up against with my with my formation, which was Skeletons, Grave Guard, and a White King in one of my earlier videos. It was pretty devastating, and it was just incredibly mobile. My opponent got to pick and choose when he wanted to be in combat.
Yep.
All right. So we could probably come back. I don't know if you want to unlock the screen. We could probably come back at some point if you want to talk about maybe the special characters and do another hangout. But we can. I think we've already discussed that we're probably going to do another one where we talk about another one of your favorites, which is Tomb Kings. Oh yeah. Which is one that I also enjoy. Not that I play Tomb Kings, but I've always had, especially since the Undead Legions came out with End Times, I've incorporated Tomb King stuff into my VC centered Undead. So we'll see what our next one's going to be. But I'm sorry to the audience if we kind of move through past this a little bit quickly, but we did have some time constraints. Maybe we'll come back and revisit some of the stuff that we weren't able to really focus on today. But hopefully that gives everybody a little bit of a better idea. If you haven't looked through the Skaven PDF, any of the Warscrolls, and or if you haven't really taken too deep a dive into the that there's a lot of flavor. There's crazy mechanics and a lot of scary damage dealing capabilities.
Mortal wounds. That's what's important. Mortal wounds.
Mortal wounds. Okay. Thank you, Vince. Thank you so much, Vince. We'll be doing more of this. And hey, everybody, have a great day.